I like that the idea of this, that the theme of this conference is disrupting data, because that's what I try to do as a writer, and everything I do. There's a great need for normative data, right? For something that describes the median experience, the constant experience. There's a huge need for that. I'm not that interested in that, because as a writer, what I've been kind of curious about and really trained to do since the time I was a kid was to find the things that people don't know, right? So I'm not saying there's not a need for normative data, but I like to find data that explains the world to you, especially something that you didn't know. And so therefore, there's a lot of room in my life for disrupting with data, whether it's data about something about the food system, or crime and punishment, about healthcare, whatever. You're kind of always looking for, not necessarily anomalies, but for data sets that will help you answer a question that you may not have even known to ask. And so what I like about the turkey story is that it is a story that's, as ridiculous as it is, it's founded on data, right? That's what led to asking the question. But data, as awesome as it is almost never enough on its own, because for two reasons. One is data can do a great job of helping you. This is my argument. I don't think I can actually prove this. But I would say that data can do a great job of helping you understand the incentives that people actually respond to. And so with Freakonomics, like, everything we've done is basically about that. It's about looking at a scenario, again, illicit activity or kids going to school, whatever. You look at a scenario and you try to understand exactly what are the incentives that lead people to do what they do. There's a big problem, though, which is that people often will say that they're responding to a certain kind of incentive when the data may show that they're responding to a different kind of incentive. And so that's what I mean by it's really important to use data to ask the kind of question that will help you answer what makes people really do what they do and not just what they say what they do. So that's what I mean by disrupting data. And I want to talk about that, and I really want to talk about, so look, the whole purpose of, look, I'm not working for Looker. They asked me to come talk and they pay me. Let's not, hide the fact. I'm not representing Looker here, but I will say something that for a moment makes me sound like a whore, and that I am, which is that the reason you buy a tool to help you understand the data and what it's telling you and what you're missing is because humans are pretty flawed. We are really good at coming up with stories that tell us, often ex post, kind of what we want, what we need to know to support the decision we already made, or to tell the story to support the spending we already did, or to support the theory that we think is really good, but which we don't know. And so it's really, so all the things I said about using data to understand incentives, all true, but I think the single biggest thing that is important to have someone helping you with, or a tool to do this, is to tell good data from crap data. And that is getting to be a bigger and bigger problem in the world, because every firm in America and most of the world has now heard about big data. And they know it is a buzzword, and they have no idea what it means, no idea what to do with it, and they're scared of it. And mostly they will get someone from the IT department to explain it to them, and that never goes well, okay? So the biggest problem is you need to use a tool to help you get data that can help you answer a question that's real and help you get forward and succeed, whether you're trying to succeed by making more money, or, one of the things that's really heartening to me about the use of big data is more and more governments, or at least a few governments, are now basically building data science, departments that are trying to do this. So in Britain, there's a thing called the Nudge Unit, which operates out of 10 Downing. In the White House, there's a thing called SBST, Social Behavior Sciences Team or something. And I think, this is great. I don't know if we're standing at the brink of a revolution or whatever, but we're definitely at least starting to get smarter about how to think empirically about solving problems, which hasn't always been the case. You look at medicine, you look at education, And believe me, if you're a senior person in a medical establishment, a hospital, insurance company, you tell the story that everything you do is empirical, but it's just not. The science of medicine is still very, very much trial and error. So look, I'm a big believer in data and disrupting with data, but I think it's incredibly important to learn how to tell good data from crap. So let me show that, let me illustrate that quickly with a little survey. Raise your hand if you, after you use a public restroom, do not wash your hands, okay? Hoist them high, let's see what we got. All right, 0. What do you got, a couple hundred people here? 200, 300 people? All right, well, even I, who am not particularly mathy, I know that 0% of whatever you are is 0. So let's pretend for a minute that instead of me just being me, that I have skills of some kind. Let's say I work for like the Centers for Disease Control, right? And let's say there's an outbreak of avian flu or swine flu, something really nasty that can be transmitted from person to person, and that hand hygiene is the first best step in defending against that. And so the CDC says to its people, hey, you got to get out in the field and get some data and do some surveys to find out how public restroom hand hygiene compliance is going around the country. So I said, well, I'll go to New York. And I come to New York and I say, well, I found out 300 people, I surveyed 300 people about their public restroom hand hygiene compliance, and they are 100% compliant. So like, they may be dying of the flu elsewhere, but New York is fine, okay? All these people are really good at it. But there's a problem, which is that I would be really, really wrong. And I know I would be really, really wrong because we actually have some pretty good data on public restroom hand hygiene compliance, and it is not 100%. All right, now, first of all, you have to think, well, how do you get those kind of data? Right? You can't stick cameras in public restrooms yet. Some people can. So what do? So rule number 1, in your firm or wherever, in your personal life, if you want to get good data, sometimes there's a channel for it. Sometimes there's a setup already and the software is doing it all for you. Sometimes you have to get a little bit creative and crafty. So with the public restroom hand washing, I started a while back doing my own collection. So I fly a lot. I'm guessing some of you do as well. If I get off a plane, if I need to use the restroom, I do so. Wash my hands, wash, and then at the sink, I just kind of linger for a while, and I always carry this handy-dandy notebook, Muji. It's like $1.49. You can afford it. And I will just mark down after I've washed, like the number of men who are like peeing and walking out without washing and the number who stop at the sink to wash. Very simple, very accurate data collection. If you find this kind of thing exciting, give it a try. And what I find is that on average, about 70% of the men in America who, I haven't done it for ladies, obviously, yet, but about 70% of the men who get off a plane and then go to either a stall or a urinal wash their hands, and 30% don't. Now, let's suspend for a moment any consequences of the not washing. Let's say we don't care about that. My point is this: if you bring the 30% of the non-washers in here and sit them with their friends, bosses, clients, colleagues, whatever, they're not going to raise their hands, right? In fact, I know that a bunch of you, men at least, are lying to me, right? It's very, because there's no way, no matter how hygienic you people happen to be, you're not that anomalous. I know that there are enough of you for me to be convinced that probably 20 to 30% of you don't routinely wash your hands after you pee all over them. And that, again, that's your thing, that's your choice. I'm just saying that if it mattered, if I were gathering the data for that kind of purpose, it's really helpful to know that that data is crap. That's terrible. And so there are two things to say about this. One is self-reported data are usually not very good. Now, everybody here knows that, I'm sure. I mean, anybody here who's ever clicked on an internet poll, right? And then discovered that you can vote 100 times, and then you rate the bot to vote 1,000 times. So you know that there are so many holes in self-reported data generally, even pretty sophisticated, so even firms that spend billions of dollars on market research. I met someone yesterday who works for a big car company who does market research on what kind of cars customers will want in the future. And it's just like, it's almost fruitless. There's almost no way that data is going to turn out to be very valuable because it's too artificial. A lot of what we've written about in the last few years has been about how the artificiality of a laboratory setting, academic lab, not a medical lab, that the artificiality is so high that you just can't really believe that undergraduates who do a certain act, that it really represents the act that you're trying to measure, because they're atypical, they're cooperators by nature, right? They're there because they want to be there. And also the scrutiny of the observer changes the action too much. So self-reported data can be really bad. The other thing is, even though most of us know the difference between good data or bad data, or self-reported data and data that you gather, economists call this often declared preferences, what you say you're going to do, or how you say you will vote, or how you say you did vote, and revealed preferences, which is what the data actually show. The problem is that even people who are super smart, who know the difference, when you're in charge of making a decision based on data, and you want a decision to turn out a certain way, you've already got a theory, the data show that the smarter you are, the better you are at seeking out data that only confirms your theory, and at ignoring or failing to seek out data that may contradict your theory. Because that's how you got to be smart in the first place, right? Is by accumulating a point of view, but it's obviously extremely important to be way more open-minded than that and really, 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 really listen to what the data have to say.